What's going on YouTube? Mike here with Renegade Forex, back again with our fourth overall video in a free Smart Money Concepts Forex trading course. 100% free for you and anyone who wants to watch and learn how to use Smart Money Concepts or become an institutional trader. This is the first video of supply and demand and step 2 in my free course called 5-Step Forex. While we're here, be sure to check out the resources at 5stepforex.com as well as renegadeforex.com and any of the links below this video in the description section. Let's go ahead and get started with supply and demand. So in this video, what we're going to be going over and covering is what exactly supply and demand is, what are supply and demand zones, how to mark a supply or demand zone, visual examples of supply and demand zones, and supply and demand zone walkthrough is going to be in the next video. So in case you haven't caught on, I like to do my videos in two parts. The first video is using slides and screenshots to explain the topic, and then the second video is to actually walk you through a live chart and apply the topic to a chart. So what exactly is supply and demand? The price of an instrument moves up and down as a result of supply and demand from market participants and speculators. Buyers bring demand to the market, applying upward pressure on prices. Sellers bring supply to the market, applying downward pressure on prices. The market runs 24/5 with buyers and sellers competing with each other to get the best possible price. And this also applies in cryptocurrency. So if you're a crypto trader, this could also be seen as 24/7. So what exactly are supply and demand zones? Let's cover supply zones first. As Smart Money Concepts traders, we sell from supply zones, and supply zones are created by an accumulation of both buy and sell orders entered into the market. Price returns to the supply zone to mitigate the buy to sell orders. After this successful mitigation of the supply zone, we see price fall to a new low. And so now for demand zones, we buy, as smart money traders, we buy from demand zones. And demand zones are created by an accumulation of both buy and sell orders entered into the market. So supply and demand zones are very similar to each other. It's just the difference of buying and selling from our standpoint, and also top and bottom from our standpoint looking at a chart. So price returns to the demand zone to mitigate the sell to buy orders. So I just want to make that very clear that in demand zones, they're actually selling and then buying. And in supply zones, they're actually buying and then selling. So smart money is in a supply zone creation, they're actually aggressively buying and then selling off. And then for demand zones, they're actually selling and then aggressively buying. And so there's a very distinct difference in that I don't want you to get mixed up before actually looking at a live chart. So after the successful mitigation of a demand zone, we see price rise to a new high. So what are the basic ways to mark a supply and demand zone on any chart in any time frame? For supply zones, the last bull or up candle before the bearish or downward move is the supply zone. This includes the matched length of candle directly to the right of it, which I'll go over in some examples in the next slides. Demand zones are pretty much the opposite. The last bear or down candle before the bullish upward move is the demand zone. This includes, again, the matched length of candle directly to the right of the last bearish candle. So again, just to retouch on that, the last bull candle before the bearish move is a supply zone. This includes the matched length of candle directly to the right of it. So you have one candle up and then one candle down, and that is a supply zone. Demand zone is the last bear candle before the bullish move. And this also includes the matched length of candle directly to the right of the bearish candle. So here's some examples of a demand zone. When we mark up demand zones, we actually use the square box drawing tool, which I'll go over in the next video when we actually do a walkthrough. For now, just understand this is a tool that you can use in TradingView. If you're totally new to this, I'll walk you through it in a future lesson. We notice here that this is actually the last down candle, the last bear candle before an aggressive up move. And the demand zone is actually behind candles that have already been printed. So if you came to this area and none of these markings were on here, the demand zone is actually behind this aggressive up move candle here. So when we draw our demand zone, it actually includes this section of this big candle. So from the top of this candle directly over to the right and down, all of this section of this candle, as well as the low of this candle. So hopefully that didn't confuse you. Basically, all you need to do is draw the box from the top of this candle to the bottom of this candle, and then drag the tool all the way over to the right, and that creates your demand zone. And when you create that demand zone, you can see this section of the candle next to it is included in that zone. So just to be clear and kind of recap on the demand zone here, this is actually aggressive selling and then buying by smart money. So we have our last sell to buy candle, or in other words, the last down move before the up candle. And we can again notice it's technically actually behind an aggressive bull candle here. So let's go ahead and take a look at supply zones. Basically, it's the exact same thing as you can see, but we are going the opposite direction. We're actually selling or looking for shorts from a supply zone. So we have an aggressive sell-off here, and we can see that the last up move before the aggressive sell-off becomes our supply zone, which we can illustrate with our drawing tool. So again, in the next video, we're going to go over how to actually draw this onto a chart, but you basically draw it from the top of this candle to the bottom of this candle, drag it all the way out for however long you need to until you see when price has come back into this zone. Or if you're trading a live chart, you just draw it all the way out and wait for price to come back into this zone, which we'll get into later in our free course here. And that's how you draw a supply zone. It's a buy to sell candle. So we're looking at the last up move before the aggressive down move. That smart money is bringing price back up to mitigate and close those orders, which is why we then experience the drop off. And so we'll get into that stuff later on in the video. So just to recap on our supply zone here before we move to the next slide, we can illustrate the supply zone by finding the last up move before the aggressive sell-off, and we can use our box tool and control or command to snap it to the top of this candle and the bottom of this candle, and then we can drag it out to either A, when price already came back and touched it, or B, if you're in a live market, watch until price actually does touch it. And so again, price returns to mitigate the buy to sell candles and then taps into the supply zone, and that's why we have a sell-off. Okay, and in conclusion on our supply and demand zone lesson, price does not have to mitigate a supply or demand zone. There are times where it will go untouched for days, months, or even years, especially depending on what time frame you're using. If you're using a daily or a weekly chart, there may be years before a supply or demand zone is ever touched, if it ever even has been touched yet. Price also does not have to have the expected reaction. It can trade right through the zone. Price can always obviously do whatever it wants. That's part of becoming a professional trader. So in other words, these are not 100% accurate, just like everything else. Nothing in trading is 100% accurate. Those two examples that I just showed you were just completely cherry-picked, very clear examples that I decided to use to illustrate for you what a supply and demand zone is. Understanding these points will come with multi-time frame analysis and swing structure. So understanding where the right supply zones are and what time frame to use them on will all come with time and effort and practice and understanding multi-time frame analysis, or in other words, using multiple time frames combined into one practice, as well as understanding swing structure, because we have swing highs and lows, and we also just have minor internal structure. And so now in the next video, we're actually going to apply what we just learned to a live chart and go through some live examples. One thing I want you to always remember throughout this free course is that this information applies to any time frame on any chart. And for full transparency, there are many parts and moving pieces to supply and demand zones, which you can find the rest of it in my full in-depth course that I do offer. So make sure to check the links below and see if that's something that you're interested in. In the supply and demand section of my course, we actually go over flip zones that sweep liquidity, refined supply and demand, so how to make supply and demand zones smaller for higher risk to reward, supply and demand on multiple time frames. We also talk about the inside bar and how to use that for supply and demand zones. We also talk about the different ways to mark supply and demand, because there are many different ways to actually interpret supply and demand and the candles that you can use in different scenarios and different setups. So all that information can be found in my full course that I offer. If that's something that you're interested in, be sure to check the links below this video. One last note, if you do want to see this Smart Money Concepts course without any YouTube ads, I did actually create an ad-free option for those people that want to upgrade. So be sure to check the links below this video, see if that's something that you're interested in. It'll come in a structured members area, not like a YouTube playlist. This will actually be lesson by lesson areas that you can refer back to. As long as you want to, for a small monthly fee, you can have access to this members area. So make sure you check the links below. And lastly, if you want a copy of the slides I'm using in this course for your notes, you can also get those for 100% free at the links below. So you just have to enter your email and I'll deliver those to you automatically for 100% free. So you can save that for your notes and refer back to it anytime. So this is the end of the supply and demand overview. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on your notifications, because I'm doing an entire in-depth free Smart Money Concepts Forex trading course. And in this course, we're going to go over the 5 simple steps to become a smart money trader. While you wait for the next video to come out, make sure you check out the resources below and the resources at 5stepforex.com as well as renegadeforex.com. In the next video, we're going to do an actual walkthrough on live charts and show you how to mark up supply and demand zones using the basic concept we learned today in this episode. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.